What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Busy weekend for the Canes. A lot of action in terms of the transfer portal commitments. They're still working, but got some good names in the boat here. We will talk about 3 new Miami Hurricanes with potentially more to come. Great weekend for baseball. Basketball's rocking and rolling, so a lot to talk about here. First, want to talk about some folks that are always rocking and rolling. That's Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-743-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in here.
How you doing, D?
Doing great, man. We're globetrotting this week, coming live from the other side of the world. But as you know, there's no days off, especially when recruiting and transfer portals rolling like it is.
Yeah, three solid pickups this weekend, and look, I think that we can all probably say there hasn't been the star-studded entries in the portal that many people may have expected. But I think when we talk about each of these pickups for Miami over the weekend, there's a real value to each of them. Different varying degrees of value, but I think all of them are going to play an important role on this team next season.
Yeah, I think role guys still got some more names to talk about that could be heating up very soon here. Of AJ Halsey visiting here Monday. You got Marty Brown, the running back from North Dakota State. That decision can come at any moment now. We'll do a reaction pod when that comes. North Dakota State running back, FCS Freshman of the Year, Jerry Rice Award winner. But before we get into those, want to start with the commitments, beginning with Keelin Marion, a wide receiver out of BYU, originally from Atlanta, Georgia. This is a veteran player, been around the block, started off at UConn before moving to BYU. 6 foot, 197, good size kid. And really what stands out here is the kick returning. This is a first-team All-America kick returner. He averaged 26 yards a return last year, including 2 long touchdown returns. Has 3 touchdown returns on kickoff in his career. More of a kickoff returner than a punt returner. So we'll see him focus there. 2 full yards ahead of Chris Johnson last year in terms of kickoff return, plus the touchdown. So it should be an upgrade in that department. Of course, you're not just bringing him in to be a returner. He wants to be more of a complete receiver. 76 catches, about 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns for his career. Also has run the ball a little bit on jet sweeps and things of that nature. Hasn't put it together yet as far as receiving. Came in strong with 474 yards as a freshman for Connecticut. Dealt with some injuries last year for BYU. 24 catches, 346 yards, 1 touchdown, then 96 more yards rushing. So he is more of a returner than a receiver at this stage. But because he's shown so many flashes as a receiver, has so many tools, he was actually ranked as the top portal receiver for this spring period, ahead of Pena, which I was surprised by. But that's how 247 ranked him. Brings a speed dimension. I think there's more there as a receiver. He was wearing the number 1 this spring for BYU. So he was making so many plays in practice. They thought he was going to be that number 1 receiver. We'll see if he can do that for Carson Beck, because Miami obviously would love him to be an All-America returner again, but that's not just what this move is about.
Yeah, look, obviously Miami has been searching for another receiver, and ideally it's like a for sure number 1 guy, and I'm not sure that's what this pickup is, but like you said, I probably just by the statistics, it's a bit of a surprise that he's rated ahead of Pena in terms of the transfer rankings. But I think the reason for that is because what the ceiling is in terms of, you see that ability in the return game, and some of that you would hope can translate into the big play ability as a wide receiver. And look, people are going to say what they want about, you need to get more, you need to continue to get to stack the chips on in terms of playmakers. But you said it, this is the highest rated guy right now out there. So they went out there and got him. That's what was available right now. And look, I think it's a solid piece to build upon what you have. You're obviously going to need these young guys to step up at that position.
No question about it. So just sticking with Marion for a second, usually with kick returners, they're smaller. This guy's not small. He's almost 200 pounds. He's a physically mature 22, 23-year-old player. So that aspect is unique as far as the return profile and moving to receiver, or being more of a receiver, I should say, because of his size, that he can use that physicality more so than like a 5'6", Brandon James type So he has that in his bag. I think the speed is an element that we need. But yeah, like you said, we had talked about Miami potentially getting a proven number one receiver out of the portal, and it's just the supply wasn't there. This was the highest rated receiver in the portal. And I think this is I'm a huge believer in transfer portal quarterbacks. You saw 11 of the 12 FBS quarterbacks that got drafted this weekend were FBS guys. And by the way, we should talk about the draft too, by the way. We'll talk about that here in a second. But 11 of the 12 quarterbacks that were FBS were transfer portal guys, Jalen Milroe being the only exception. So I'm all about transfer quarterbacks. However, one negative is when you don't have a Carson Beck setup, that hurts you in the ability to get an Eric Singleton, right? That hurts you in the ability to get, Zachariah Branch, some of those guys in that earlier window, Brarian Brown, that probably would have had more of a receiving impact on paper, right? Based on what they had done in college. So that's the negative, but ultimately you get a player who's a blue chip transfer. You have the number 4 portal class after this commitment. And I think this is someone that could help Miami both on special teams and with his speed on offense.
So let's take a look at another one of these transfer pickups from over the weekend. Let's go with the kicker first. Everyone's going to expect the kicker to be last year. So let's talk about Bert Auburn coming over from Texas. And look, Carter Davis has been here, came over from FAU, and there was some good momentum for him, I would say, at the latter part of spring practice. We saw Abram Murray transfer out, but you now bring in Bert Auburn, who's been the guy at Texas and has been in a lot of big situations, right? So you would hope that can sort of translate here to Miami.
And what you're talking about with Bert Auburn is a bounce back, right? That's really what we're talking about here. This is somebody from the University of Texas who was considered one of the.
Looks like we lost D Money here momentarily, but look, Bert Auburn, as he was getting to, did not have a great season last year at Texas. And D, as I was saying, and what you were getting to is that Bert Auburn did not have a great season last year at Texas, but was considered coming in, as a big time kicker.
By the way, smooth transition there, Pete, after I kicked myself out for a second by accident. So yeah, this is a person who's all Big 12 at Texas in 2023, first team. So he was considered, like you said, one of the best kickers in the country, and then had a really rough season this year. Was booed, 16 to 25, dropped from 83% field goal percentage to 64%, and really had a tough time there with a lot of pressure at Texas. So you're betting on the bounce back. He's done it before, so he has the talent. He's kicked in big games. And if no matter what, Borregales is the best kicker in the country. So you saw him get drafted by the Patriots. So as the top kicker. So you're not probably going to replace that. But if you get Bert Auburn from 2023, you're going to have one of the better, if not the best kickers in the ACC this following year. So that is the goal. Now, if you have the kicker that kicked for Texas last year that was mentally not where he wanted to be, that's a different story. I think going to a new environment, people didn't see all these misses. They don't know about all that, is going to help him. It's going to be a different just kind of atmosphere. Texas is a high-pressure job, and SEC, high-pressure conference. When you're not playing well, it's tough. There's a lot of pressure at Miami too, but he gets to reset and recalibrate. And, I talked to somebody about this over the weekend, and what was the example was NFL. You see kickers all the time kind of flame out and just struggle and get cut. Then they go to another team, and they're kicking no problem, right? I think of Young Hoku. Remember, he had some struggles and then ended up being a good kicker. So you see it happen in the NFL, and you're hoping that something similar happens with Bert Auburn because, again, this was one of the best kickers in the country, 83% in 2023. And doesn't miss extra points, which is good. But in general, just a guy with some ability who you hope can get back to his proper form.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, we've been very, very spoiled with the Borregales brothers back to back here. And it's you got to be happy for the kid to have it drafted here by the Patriots. We'll get into the draft here in a bit, but he definitely deserved that. Now this last pickup here, Kamal Bonner, linebacker from NC State. I think talking to people around the program, this might be the one that they're most excited about in terms of major impact on the team this season.
Yeah, this is a different kind of transfer because it's a rising player, right? This is a redshirt freshman last year, so he's got 3 years of eligibility with the Canes. 6'2.5", 215, was a safety kind of linebacker out of Moultrie, Georgia. Same city, same town as Nikar, who, of course, is just announced he's coming back to the Miami Hurricanes as they're jumping in the portal. So you go back and get Kamal Bonner, Jai Lamar, or a running back recruit this year in high school, is also from that area. Miami's after him hard as well. But with Bonner, like I said, 6'2", 215, the weight's starting to come on. He still has the movement skills from safety, but he showed a natural instinct for a linebacker. He came in midseason due to injury as a starter, as a redshirt freshman, and was basically a tackling machine. 7, 8, 9 tackles each game. Ultimately finished with 56 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and a sack. And the trajectory's up. You talk to North Carolina State fans, you read their boards, you hear from their people. Nobody is happy to lose Bonner on that side. And then on our side, I can tell you, talking to sources, Miami people are very, very excited about this player. They think the arrow's pointing up in a major way. He'll keep adding weight. He just has a natural instinct, which is proven in ACC play. And this defense, we need linebackers that can find the ball and make tackles. And that's something that this guy can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, I think that this is someone that people in the building think can be an elevator for this team this year. And look, I think that all, like we said in the beginning of this segment, all 3 of these guys can be impactful players for Miami in terms of the role that they're playing. But Bonner, I think, raises the level of that room.
Yeah, and I like the eligibility. This is just someone who can grow with guys like Pruitt, guys like some of these other linebackers you brought in. And you talk about this year's freshman class, right? Ezekiel Marcelin got banged up. He'll miss some time. Kellen Wiley's super talented. He's still kind of getting his feet under him. This is someone who's a young player who's played and produced. So I think that age of player, because Aguirre is a junior, Besaint's a senior, sophomore and under, they needed somebody who had proven they could play. And I think with Bonner, he does that while still giving you upside like a high school kid, because he's got 3 years to go. So really, I tell you, this is someone that, like you mentioned, and P, you can confirm, talking to people in the building, this is a name you keep hearing come up. It's like, wow, this guy's really got a chance to be a good player for us.
Yep, no doubt. So those were the 3 pickups. You mentioned AJ Halsey visiting Miami on Monday here. So, safety is a position that they've been working on here, and we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, there's intent on getting a starting safety out of the portal. One of the names we know is AJ Halsey out of Houston. Big, physical, first team All Big 12, extremely highly rated from a Pro Football Focus standpoint. Originally, I want to say from New Mexico, and then transferred to Houston. So he's an ascendant player. Became a first team All Big 12 player under Zach Etheridge. So there's a connection there. LSU's on him. Ole Miss is on him, although they've taken a couple portal safeties in the last couple days. But it makes so much sense for Miami, given the fact he's already produced. He knows Coach Etheridge, and Miami is a screaming needed safety. Again, I keep hearing Miami they're not just only looking at one safety. They got other players they're interested in, but Halsey is a name that makes a lot of sense right away as a kind of a plug and play. Knows Etheridge, has size, 215, productive. But they believe had 5 interceptions last year in that first team All Big 12 season. So makes a lot of sense. 1 year of eligibility, but brings you that veteran presence. He'll be visiting Miami tomorrow. It's his first actual visit. Other schools have visited him, I believe, in person and Zoom. So now this is his first visit to Miami. Miami, I don't think, wants to let him leave without a commitment.
All right, D. So we got a few more things to get to here outside of football. I know, yeah.
We want to talk about Marty.
Marty Brown. Yeah, I know Brown, that. Yeah, I was gonna say that he's another guy that that's on the radar, and definitely I think someone to keep an eye on in their horizon.
Yeah, Shamar Brown. If you've seen the name Charmar, but they call him Marty, out of North Dakota State, Jerry Rice Award winner, FCS Freshman of the Year, is an award that Cam Ward won, Trey Lance won, Shador Sanders won. So it's a pretty prestigious award. And this guy won it for North Dakota State, one of the best programs, if not the best program in FCS perennially. So we'll see what happens there. He's an Omaha, Nebraska native, Nebraska did not recruit him out of high school. Now they're doubling back on him because they see he's good. Miami wants to bring him in to pair with Jordan Lyle. Also, Mark Fletcher had that trio there. He had a great visit to Miami. Nebraska's the hometown school. Miami's pushing, and I hear a lot of confidence around Miami. We'll see. I mean, again, as we're recording this, he still hasn't committed. We'll see if anything changes. If he does commit somewhere, or if he comes to Miami, we'll do an instant reaction pod. But last we heard that there was some confidence with Marty, understanding that he's a Nebraska native.
So you want to talk some draft stuff here before we get to other sports?
Yeah, let's just go recap, go through the list here, Pete, about the Miami draftees. By the way, extremely happy for all these guys you've watched their whole careers, basically, at least at Miami. And it's exciting to see it pay off. This is one of my favorite days. It's been a boring day the last few years for the Canes, starting to get a little more exciting. When Mario Cristobal took this job, Miami had one player drafted, which was Jonathan Ford in the 7th round, the 13th pick of the 7th round, 234th pick overall is John Ford. That's what Cristobal inherited. And then you look, next year you had 3 players with Tyreek Stevenson, Will Mallory, DJ Ivey. Next year you had 4 players, Cam Kitchens, Jaden Davis, Matt Lee, and James Williams. This year, 7 players. So you see the progression upwards. And of course, it starts at the top with the number 1 overall player in the draft, Cam Ward. I don't know what more you could say. We talked about him on Friday, but couldn't happen to a better person, a better ambassador for the university, and somebody who I think is going to remind a lot of people of Steve McNair there in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think overall, we said the other day, I think 6 to 7 on the lower end. It ended up being 7 draftees, and then 9 to 10 on the higher end. Xavier Estrepo being the most productive receiver in Miami history, not being one of the guys drafted, ending up in a great situation, obviously, with Tennessee. I think overall, a few things that stood out. The Jalen Rivers, I think, went where we thought he would go in that 5th, 6th round range. Kiko Mauanoa, like we said, had helped himself. He ended up in that 5th round with the Jets. Tyler Barron, I think I said 6th, you said 7th, but it was right there. And then the one that I think surprised me the most was Damian Martinez sliding. Talked to a few people leading up in the week leading up to the draft there, and Martinez, I think, had put himself in a good position. But number one, it was a deep draft at running back, and I think at that point, it's tough to say, look, a guy should come back or he shouldn't come back. I think at that position, he still made the right call because the amount of hits that you take at that spot. But I think that was a bit unlucky for him there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think
because I haven't gotten anything that said, look, he did something wrong in an interview or anything like that. I just think it's the nature of position, man. I think these teams just don't really value that spot that much.
Well, it was like you said, it was deep running back drafts. You had a ton of running backs go off the boards, people that had different skill sets, not necessarily every down back like Martinez, but guys that maybe had more receiving ability or returning. But to me, this was one of the better picks of the draft. I thought it was a complete steal, and I think Damian Martinez is going to be great. They have some good backs. Kenneth Walker, he's been bounced around there. Zach Charbonnet, who's actually similar to Martinez. I think it's a physical back. Kenny McIntosh, guy we've been watching since high school. But I think Martinez can jump right in here in the mix. And I wouldn't be surprised if he flies up that depth chart. I don't see anybody there that is.
Yeah, they like him a lot. No, they're just talking to people in that organization. I think that they believe he can be someone who works himself into that mix pretty early.
Yeah, so like you said, nothing real surprising. Barron went earlier than we thought, which, awesome for him. He had a great post-draft process or post-season process, pre-draft process. I wonder if the success of like a Leonard Taylor, right, someone that the Jets had as an undrafted free agent with a lot of tools, ended up playing a ton of snaps for them, getting 2 sacks, multiple tackles for loss. Looks like he's going to be a fixture of that D-line. I wonder if they said, hey, listen, I know that, Barron didn't look great all season in Guidry's defense, but we think in our defense, he could be a great player. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. I don't know. It's a new regime out there.
I think that he tested, like I said, I think he tested at a pretty high level compared to what Leonard Taylor did. But it can't hurt. Those at that position, you take a chance on the traits, right?
Yeah.
So,
and he's flashed production before, but obviously the disappointing part of this is Xavier Restrepo not getting picked. I think that's the one that jumps out. Jacoby George as well. Two guys who really produced for the Canes. Restrepo, particularly first team All-American. George had his ups and downs, but ultimately was a productive player. Then you have Sam Brown, who kind of disappointing, but he had the testing. I think the downfall for all three of these guys is
consistency.
Well, Restrepo is extremely consistent.
Well,
Brown and
I meant more for Brown and and Jacoby. Yeah,
I think for guys that, let's say Brown, let's just focus on George and Restrepo. For guys that aren't speed demons and are not big,
you got to be strong.
Neither of these guys returns. Neither of them's a punt returner. So I think when you have guys that are not that big, not that fast, and they don't return, that makes it tricky to fit them into this roster. I think Restrepo going to Tennessee is going to be incredible for him. I expect him to have a ton of success with Ward and make the team. We'll see if it hopefully stays healthy. It's a tough position to have to make the team from the bottom, but he can do it, and he's in the right place. And then George got a huge signing bonus. What I'm told is equivalent to like a 6th-round pick. I think it was like 245 G's. So
yeah,
he'll have a chance. And then Sam Brown with the Dolphins, speed kills. They like guys with athleticism. So that all three of those fits to me make sense for each of these players, and hopefully they can stick around, because ultimately, if you're Allen Hurns and you have 1,000-yard season as an undrafted player, who cares?
And just to explain to you how it works with like Jacoby George, for example, I'm not sure what I think it was like 215,000 guaranteed. So he'll get a signing bonus up front. I don't know. It could be anywhere from like 25 to like 75,000, but then he's going to get, basically they're saying we're guaranteeing you this portion of the salary. So at the end of the day, they're pretty much saying unless he's awful, he's going to be on our practice squad, because they have to owe him. They're going to owe him that money anyways. It'll be at the later part of the year, but like he's going to get a real look. You get that sort of guaranteed money, they're almost looking at you like a 7th-round pick, right? They had to outbid other teams to go get you. So I would think that Jacoby George has a solid shot.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he does. That's the fact he's getting paid. That matters, right? That's just money in his pocket. He earned it. So we'll see. I think those are the guys. Barrow. Where did Barrow end up with, Pete? I know
Falcons.
I
believe it was the Falcons.
They like undersized defensive linemen. That makes sense. Mish Powell to the Vikings. So we'll see. We've had a lot of guys stick around as undrafted free agents and play a lot of games in the NFL. There's been a few guys.
Zach Carpenter of the Dolphins.
Right. So he doesn't go too far. So we'll see, man. Hopefully some of these guys stick around, and hopefully next year we'll keep adding to it, maybe with multiple 1st-round picks. That was one thing. Arroyo slid a little more than I thought. Ended up being a 2nd-rounder anyways. But, some of the guys that went ahead of him, Terrence Ferguson, who's a solid player, actually signed by Mario Cristobal at Oregon. Mason Taylor, good player, but I continue to say, and I believe it, the best player of all these tight ends will be, assuming he's healthy, will be Arroyo. But we'll see. Minicamp starts pretty soon, so we'll get the first look at these guys quickly.
Yeah, I think I said he would go in the next 10, 15 picks. He went 18 picks later on day 2 there. So little outside of the range. I think, I thought he had a chance to go 1st round as well. So didn't quite do. I think again, without a doubt, would have been a 1st-round pick if not for the medical stuff from his past.
Yeah, no question about it. That was it. But look, he's healthy. He got picked high. Great development story for the Canes. Somebody who signed with Miami under Manny Diaz, had the injury setback, continued to develop, and now is a premier draft pick as a top 50 pick, and is in the NFL, man. He's got a chance to continue that tight end legacy, which is now David Njoku as a Pro Bowl player. He's probably going to be one of the highest paid linemen or tight ends in the league once he signs here. So trending in the right direction.
He signed his last deal, so
let's keep it going. But yeah, excited for all those guys. Always fun. And hopefully some of these, you talk about transfer portal guys, Barron transfer portal, Mawanoa transfer portal. Obviously Cam Ward is the #1 overall pick. Transfer portal, Damian Martinez transfer portal. So hopefully some of these guys that were signed here in spring and in the fall, in the winter period end up being NFL draft picks as well.
No doubt.
So Pete, before we get to basketball, because I know you got some tidbits there, I got to give some love to the baseball team. So they have won 8 straight ACC games, which is insane. Sweep of Boston College, coming off the sweep of Georgia Tech, coming off the great performance against Duke. So this team is white hot at the right time. Got some really, really nice performances out of their freshmen. Tate Durias on Sunday, AJ Siskar on Saturday. Their 2 freshman starters, of course, their ace, Griffin Hughes, on Friday has been lights out during this run. There it is, a picture of Fenway Park. That was the Sunday game, which they won on the strength of a 3-run home run by Daniel Cuvée, who's really starting to swing the bat well. The third baseman, everything third baseman, who started, I won't say started slow because he really was playing pretty good, but who was not where he was last year, but now is starting to really find it and carry this team. Max Galvin, really good hitter all throughout camp, who, fall, he was great. In the early winter, he was great. And now you see that he's showing you what you saw in practice, and he's really swinging the ball well from the left-hand side. So those guys hitting the way they are. Ogden's been great all year. Some of the freshmen having nice performances. And then, of course, that staff, plus Brian Walters moving to the closer role. Everything seems to be coming together. Shout out to JD Arteaga. I know he took a lot of heat. He's been taking a lot of heat, still is taking a lot of heat, but 8 straight ACC wins. Now you're 12-9 in the ACC. You're looking very good, barring a collapse, which you still got some time here, but barring a collapse, should be a good bet to make a regional. And I think they got a great shot, just the way the schedule stacks up. It was a very front-loaded schedule with some of the hardest games early, so maybe that made the team look worse than it was. But I think just the adjustments that you've made as far as Walters at closer, the 2 freshman starters there on Saturday and Sunday, and then just the way Cuvée and Galvin are coming on. This is a team that's peaking at the right time, and shout out to that whole staff for getting this thing turned around.
Yep. And of course, big series coming up here against NC State, right?
Yeah, really good ball club. So, let's see where it goes, man, because that's a tough opponent. That's a hot NC State team. I believe, let me just confirm before I say it, I believe they're coming off a great series here against Clemson. I believe it was a sweep of an elite Clemson team, number 2 in the country. So, NC State is playing some really, really good baseball, and it's going to be fun.
Is this going to be is this like a borderline top 25 team, you would say right now, the Canes?
I think their RPIs in the 30s. They're getting close. You beat NC State.
So you win this series, and you're right there.
You're right there. Yeah, you're right there. So this team's going.
And then do you have FIU again midweek?
Yeah, get some revenge. That's been brutal. That's been a brutal series for the Canes. If the Canes have been playing better in the midweeks with how good they've been in the ACC lately, they could have a chance to potentially host a regional, but they're not there yet.
So should we get to
give us a scoop
real quick?
Give us a scoop on Canes hoops.
Yeah. So on Sunday, they picked up a commit from Jordan Key, who was a freshman at Georgia last year. Wasn't a huge recruit. Was a 3-star. Was a top 30 player in the state of Florida a couple years ago from Sagemont Prep. And he was a developmental guy brought in by Georgia, I think, kind of at the end of the roster. And I think here at Miami, probably somewhat similar, where he's a guy that, from what I understand, was a guy that during the season gave Georgia a lot of good looks in practice, wasn't ready to be a consistent player for Georgia. And I think he knew that, and he knew that coming in, that it was going to be a redshirt year for him. And I think Georgia understood that too. But you're at a situation right now where you have 8 guys committed coming in to Miami that are all expected to play. From what I've been told, 8, 9 deep. You have a Caden Lewis who was here this weekend. I'll get into him a little bit more now in a second, but you add him to the fold potentially, that would be 9. And then you now have Jordan Key. You need to fill out this roster with guys who are legit down the line players. He may not be ready to be a contributor right here, right now, but he could be someone that you develop, and then a year or two is a real player on this team. So you're going to need to add a couple more bodies here at the end of the roster. And Jordan Key, a guy from Georgia, again, played his first year at Georgia, familiarity with Eric Pastrana, assistant coach at Miami. So, he's most likely understanding the type of athlete he is, the character that you're bringing into the locker room, all of that. Now, a Caden Lewis, who, for those who are unaware, this is a top 5 point guard in the country, top 30 player in the country on the 247 composite, 6'2", 185, 190 guard, out of the number 1 player in DC, obviously a very talented basketball area, and big time scorer, can score at all 3 levels, shooter. Miami, so here's the situation with him. Georgia, Villanova, Miami have been considered the top 3 coming in here. Was a former Kentucky commit. They brought in a bunch of guys. They brought in Jalen Lowe, who's expected to be there for 2 years as their point guard. I think he was, from what I understand, talking to some people around the Kentucky program, he was expecting to maybe be the 6th man and then take over the next year. But Jalen Lowe, coming over from Pitt, most likely going to be there for a couple years. And I don't think that was a situation he was willing to, continue with. So Villanova, Georgia, Miami. From what I've understood, Villanova, with Devin Askew committing, they're out of it. Georgia, from what Miami believes, I think, or from what I've been told, Georgia is also out of it. So unless there's a mystery team there, I believe Miami's in a very good position to land a Caden Lewis. If that happens, Miami has now brought in, with Jay Lucas, 3 top 40 players in this class. And our boy Trenton Breeze has done the math. That would be the number 7 recruiting class in the country. Coming off of the season that Miami just had in 2 consecutive years. I'd be hard
with
pressed to find a better,
Malovich not getting any stars,
and that's
right?
with Timothée Malovich, the Euro, not being in that mix, who I think would be, pretty highly rated. I think you're looking at a 4-star there.
Yeah, they didn't rate him because they thought he was potentially going to go pro. He's already a pro.
He already was in. He was in the draft last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have gone to the draft this year, but yeah, you're talking about a guy who probably would have been a mid to high 4-star recruit, most likely. So it's not normal how quickly he's put this thing together. You're talking about a top, again, if a Caden Lewis comes here, top 10 recruiting class, and then a portal class of 3 guys who were starters on tournament teams, and then an Ernest Ude at center, who was, I mean, he's a guy who you take all day, former 5-star recruit, big body, athlete, physicality, and there's more development there. So yeah, man, still got to see what happens when they get out on the court, but high level of talent that's being acquired here. Shelton Henderson, of course, being kind of like the crown jewel of all this. But I saw the other day there was one of these ranking services who had both Henderson and Lewis in the top 18 in the country. So you're talking about 2 top 20 on some services recruits in the country coming to Miami. 2 top. Just with those 2 right there, that's 2 top 30, pretty much consensus on these rankings coming to Miami. And pretty insane.
And the team's pretty much done. I mean, when you look at Renault, Donaldson, Uday, Washington, by the way, all those guys are 4-star transfers. Marcus Allen, who was a 4-star, a higher end 4-star out of high school, and now Jordan Key
and Dante Allen, who was a top 40 recruit in the country. Top 45 recruit in the country.
Yeah, so these are all blue chippers. And what I like is, a lot of times you'll see, we saw this with Larinaga. You're adding portal talent. Firstly, you don't know how the position fits. We talked about that a million times. You don't know how he didn't get guys with any kind of role. But beyond that, he didn't know these guys. Whereas with this crew, you mentioned Pastrana, right? Him having a link to Key, who they just signed as a combo guard. Marcus,
they're not going to bring in this a Key if he can't play at the University of Miami. I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? Like this kid, he was a state champ at point guard at Sagemont.
Yeah.
Like at the very least, you're bringing in a guy who was a big time winner at the high school level.
When Pastrana saw him practice every day and everything else. So I mean, these guys, it's not like you're bringing in just players that no one knows. So Shelton Henderson, he's been coached by the Lucas family since he was a kid. Dante Allen, coached by Coach Moran. Jordan Key, coached by Pastrana. Marcus Allen, coached by Charleston Young. Renault, coached by Moran. So they know all these guys. I think that's going to make a huge difference when you put this whole thing together.
Yeah, no, and the personalities are going to be there's a lot of dogs, man. It's a lot of what you want in terms of putting a winning locker room together. So very exciting, man. And I think these guys aren't going to come into the Miami like wide-eyed. They're gonna be coming in there thinking they can go in and win the ACC next year.
Look, it's wide open. I mean, Duke lost, a lot. They're getting a lot back, or getting a lot coming in, but those are new players. They're guys that these guys
unless Coach Lucas has something to say about it.
You've been dropping that one every single time.
Look, we're gonna know here if that is we'll know here in the next week. I think if that's dead or if it's still a thing.
And look, if that's the thing, obviously we'll be all over it and we'll celebrate. But the truth is, this team,
what they've put together here is ready.
And Lewis tomorrow. I mean, we were watching his highlights together. I mean, DC, we know that's the area. PG County, that whole area is between DC, Baltimore, and in between. That whole area is just unreal for basketball. This guy's layup package, man, is out of this world. His finishing.
I sent you that. Yeah, I sent you that video. That was I don't want to get hit with anything. I don't know where that was from in terms of copyright here. So, but that, I mean, you guys have to, again, Caden Lewis, we'll be, if he commits, we'll do a reaction to it as well. But big time scoring point guard and a guy who has the ability to run an offense as well.
A lot to look forward to, man. Listen, we're celebrating Cam Ward going #1. Miami Hurricane team store. Pete, pull that one up. This is the official Miami retail provider, MiamiHTS.com online, in person, right across the street from the University of Miami, next to Thesis Hotel. They got the Cam Ward #1 overall pick merchandise, with the one logo saying, "Why not me?" You want to celebrate the #1 pick in the draft. You got all that kind of stuff there at the Miami Hurricane team store. Ton of stuff for the centennial, 100 years of Miami Hurricanes. You got 100 years, 100 games, the greatest football games in Miami history. Nice book. You got the centennial cap. You got the lapel pin. A lot of stuff here for the centennial. You got the Ed Reed, Sean Taylor throwbacks, all kinds of stuff at the Miami Hurricane team store. Promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item. You can do that online. If you're in the store, just say, "Hey, CanesInSight." They'll press a little button behind the cashier and take care of you, 20% off your first item. Exciting times, man. Baseball's cooking. Football's doing some work in the portal, getting guys picked #1 overall. And basketball could continue to heat up, man. So I know you're feeling good.
It's crazy how quickly these things turn around, right? I mean, like February. February, the baseball team was not off to a great start, right? February, March, and Jay Luke, the basketball team has had their struggles, and then you're excited about the Jay Lucas hire, but then it doesn't things don't get started here until late March, and now things seem to be working out with the baseball team, obviously, and a lot of good things on the basketball side. And football side, we saw the progress last year, and the draft was kind of like a cherry on top. Now I got to build on that.
Yes, sir. A lot of fun. We even though we're both moving around, we'll be coming to you every single day on CanesInsight.com and on CanesInsight Daily Podcast and CanesInsight.com. 7 million posts and counting. Sign up today.
Go Canes. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. See you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.